Peter. This is Kathy Ann, and I'm Gordie. And just before we get going, just want to get a sense of the composition of the room. Are there any privacy officers or privacy folks amongst us? Besides Kathy Ann?
Was
Yes?
that a yes? One privacy officer there? Yes? Are you? No.
Privacy and information security.
Okay, they do it all. They're at Western. I recognize a lot of our security cohorts. And any folks here involved with their general counsel or legal work for the universities? Okay, Lawrence? Okay, so there's at least one. And the rest then, if you don't raise your hand up to any of those three other categories, IT? Okay. So that's good then. That's good for us to know. Mm-hmm. There's besides yourself, there's not many lawyers, so we won't be at risk for libel as we use you.
But you're not a lawyer. You just work closely with legal.
I'm a really honest more an engineer with a lot of law training. So it makes me real interesting.
Very good.
Okay. And before we start too, we'll just speak about the catalyst and the impetus and what brought us here. It was at a few other conferences. EduCause, I recall, was one. There was a RSA conference one year where there was a similarly themed type of presentation. One went something to the effect of privacy, security, and legal, a marriage made in heaven, or strange bedfellows. And there were other such topics where the gist is, you may not normally expect this, but here are these entities working together. And that struck me as strange, because I had always known and benefited from tight integration at the university. And Kathy and I, we actually have or it's my pleasure. I've actually worked with her at a prior organization. We're both in the health sector previously, and there as well, it was from the onset that we're tightly interwoven and integrated. And so that's part of the catalyst. Also, just through our Cuccio security SIG, I've noticed that not all of my cohort have the luxury of first of all, a privacy office and a privacy officer, or B, if they have one, in working so closely in unison. And so some of my cohort, for example, they're responsible as well for FOIA information access requests, in addition to privacy impact assessments and whatnot. And again, that struck me as odd. So hence we saw a niche that perhaps we could speak to here. And so part of our roadmap for today then is we'll give a quick background on the university, just very quick, just to set some context. We'll also give background on the teams, on the three entities that we're talking about, are privacy, security, and legal. We'll talk about that synergy that we're very, very fortunate to have. And we'll talk about the pros, the cons, and some lessons learned. So with that, the University of Alberta is over 100 years old. The main campus is in Edmonton. In addition, there's two other smaller campuses in Edmonton, and there's also some satellite campuses in Camrose, Alberta, and in Calgary.
Calgary is another small town in Alberta.
Like a neglected stepbrother or something, or stepchild. Anybody here from UFC? I don't see our cohort. Dennis, I don't see him.
That's a shame.
Yeah, okay. It's a fun rivalry. Think Flames and Oilers, and then you'll get a sense of it. So, like most other universities here, we have upwards of 18 different faculties, and within them there are numerous departments and units. And of those, there are about 8, at least, departments and some faculties that are are comprising our health sector as well. And within there's a teaching and learning hospital that we have as well. And that's all relevant in terms of information management, privacy, and security. We're approximately the fourth largest research intensive university in Canada, and there's about 38,000 undergrads and 15,000 faculty and staff. So that's just a quick snapshot. Here are some other snapshots. That's the top is our registrar's office, and below is the actual location, auditorium where the majority of the convocation takes place. I think that was my year.
Is it?
Yeah. This is an aerial of our main campus. So we're just south of the downtown, divided by the river there. This building here is interesting. From this view, you wouldn't get its namesake as well, but it's known as the Butter Dome. And from the ground, because it looks like a big pat butter.
We often talk about the people across the river. So the university's on this side, which is the south side of the river. Across the river is the legislature. So one of our funders, of course, the province of Alberta, the Ministry of Advanced Education, lots of politicking and whatnot, budget cuts, all of that. That's across the river.
You can see the
legislature
right there.
Yeah.
Right there. So
So it does go downstream.
yes. And as further to Kathy Ann's point, there are a lot of student or even faculty led protests that will go across the river and congregate there. Mm-hmm. And after that, they'll disperse amongst one of Edmonton's lovely dining establishments over there. And this is a snapshot of one of our hospital facilities. And that's actually me getting a procedure. No, it's not. It better not be. And so we'll talk about the teams. The IT security office is part of the office that we call the Vice Provost of Information Technology. Our VP IT office is relatively small in and of itself, but then within our office is the executive director of our primary central computing team, which is about 250 in size. In total, there's about 450 to 500 IT folks at the U of A. And so this is just to give you a sense of the hierarchy. The IT security office was first formed in 2009.
And then there's the general counsel's office. So those are the internal lawyers for the university. And the general counsel's office report to the president of the university. We use counsel that's both internal and external. And we've had a general counsel's office since approximately 2007 on campus. And
Kathy Ann, I'll let you talk about.
I just said,
that's
okay,
fine.
yeah. So information access and privacy, that's the office that I work in. And we report directly to general counsel's office. Small office. I'm a full-time advisor. We have a half-time officer, and we have a full-time admin assistant. So it's 2.5 people. So it's really important that we use the resources that we have available on campus, including the resources of the IT security officer and the others that are available to us, because it's a huge campus and there's way too many departments to deal with just for the consults alone, never mind the FOIP requests, just to do it on our own. So we work very collaboratively.
And of note here is by design the separation and greater autonomy, if you will, of general counsel, and which supports Kathy Ann's privacy office. And also of note is that the two officers in the privacy office are lawyers, and so we'll have to be careful at times not to try to elicit legal counsel from within your office, because then that more appropriately should be directed to.
That's right.
to a general
That's
counsel.
right. Exactly. So I'm not a practicing lawyer. I'm a member of the Manitoba Bar, and I've settled now in Alberta. But our recently appointed half-time advisor, who holds the leadership position within the office, is actually coming from general counsel's office. So she has to be particularly careful in the role when she's speaking on behalf of the FOIP office, the Information and Privacy Office. She has to be careful to not hold out that she's giving legal advice, which is kind of tricky because she worked on campus for 6 years already in the general counsel's office. So people see her name and think, now I'm getting legal advice.
And so a little bit more discussion about actual duties and whatnot. And so not unlike a lot of my good security cohorts here, the IT security office and myself as a security officer is responsible for the university's security plan and program. So, and that entails everything from security architecture to governance to policy to rules around enforcement and to providing coordination and oversight with operations as well. I'm very fortunate to have some really good security administrators, not only within our primary center area, but then throughout the university as well, that can be called upon to do a lot of the actual groundwork and heavy lifting. And in addition, there is the incident, everything from incident response to risk management to the other domains. And again, that's just a quick and dirty background on that.
At the Privacy Office, we are, as I've said, involved in the processing of formal FOIP requests. We deal with informal FOIP requests, with FOIP, of course, being the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. We work closely with the IT Security Office on breaches, the investigation, taking steps forward. We work closely together on PIA's privacy impact assessments as well. So where our office is a central one, and it's available, like the IT Security Office, available to all the many different departments on campus.
And even with information access requests or certain privacy breaches that don't seemingly have a explicit tie-in with IT security or IT systems, there'll still be a lot of interaction as well. So for example, if the information access request involves a repository where we can provide support as that system custodian or in working with the respective system custodians. Kathleen, I'll let you speak for the we were going to have our someone from our legal counsel join us, and the price of their ticket went up at the last moment because they were watching too late. I'm kidding. They just couldn't.
So I get to tell you on behalf of legal that it's a small office as well. We have the general counsel, who I mentioned. The office started, that position started back in 2007. Then there are two other lawyers, one of whom works full-time, the other is part-time. And once again, like our office or like the IT security office, there's just a large volume of work. So it really behooves all of us to work collaboratively whenever possible.
Did you mention the external counsel?
I don't remember. I meant to if I didn't. We also deal with external counsel, so it means that we pay big bucks for people across the river, not to be confused with the legislature, which is also across the river. The external counsel's office that we deal with is across the river as well, so that could be for privacy or security issues. We deal with the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner's Office, often need legal counsel for that. Could be internal, could be external.
Okay, so after some background on the teams, again, the key part and the gist of this talk is the overlap. And so naturally, there'll be some overlap at times between any two of the three, and often it'll involve all three. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that overlapping section that doesn't involve all three that we're focusing on today. So some of the synergy involved, it at the university spawned organically. It wasn't mandated by any one of the parties or the bodies that they report to. Thankfully, because there would be a privacy type of task or item that had some IT or some security angle to it. We naturally.
It happened naturally, and it made sense because, as Gordie, one of the reasons that it made sense was that, as Gordie commented earlier, we had worked in the health sector together previously. We were with what was then the Alberta Cancer Board, and even the organizational structure there supported our close work. So that there we were working in the Information Security and Privacy Office, ISPO. So now my office is IPO, Information and Privacy Office. But we came both to our positions separately with the attitude of understanding that we could help one another through what was arising. So, for example, in terms of the synergy for the legislative requirements, we deal with the FOIP, or Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, of which there are other provincial counterparts which you're probably aware of. Also, we deal with the Health Information Act. Gordie pointed out that there's a teaching hospital that's associated with the university that brings all kinds of interesting and complex legal questions as to who's who. Is somebody acting on behalf of the hospital or on behalf of the university? So the legislative requirements relate to the FOIP Act and the HIA, or Health Information Act. And those acts tell us that in addition to keeping individuals' personal information private, we also have to take reasonable measures to safeguard the information technology security side. And so then how do we do that? We call on Gordie's office.
And work collaboratively.
Absolutely.
With legal and others. And so all this collaboration, it tends to provide for a much more comprehensive and full scope of work. Mm-hmm. So whether it's reviewing a project initiation request, or it's reviewing a proposed major change to an information flow, or some new system or outsourcing, what have you, this will provide a much more broad and much less myopic scope when we're applying our work.
So what does SMS stand for?
Supply management services.
Right. So supply and management services, like another thing we do is deal with contract reviews. So supply and management services, if there's a contract that is sufficiently large, and what is the
it's 75.
70. Yeah. If there's going to be a new software system coming in that's $75,000 or more that the university is spending on it, then the people who are actually administering the contract know that they have to touch base with our office, Gordie's office, and with legal. The reason is that we need to ensure that we have the appropriate contractual provisions in place. So if they are holding some of our information, they have to tell us if there's a breach. If they are holding some of our information, they have to promise to destroy personal information within a certain amount of time. And wherever possible, we put those provisions in the contract up front. So it does take a bit of time at the front end, but it's well worth it, because then when something happens, if something should happen down the line, we've got it set out right there in the contract as to whose role is whose, what are the roles and responsibilities exactly. And for that, we need to have legal, we need to have IT, and we need to have privacy at the table.
Okay. And so now we'll talk about some of the lessons learned and pros and cons, and that's a young Clint Eastwood,
but handsome
nonetheless. Yes. So we'll actually start with some of the bad and ugly, if you will, and a lot of this is around what we find are general myths and misconceptions or misunderstandings that float around out there about the required privacy and security processes or reviews. And so one of the misconceptions is that it's overly bureaucratic. It's going to set your timeline back to the Stone Age. You're not going to be able to launch or go live on time. it should be avoided at all costs. And a lot of this also stems from a misunderstanding about one's own security posture. So often sponsors will feel, well, my system or my proposed system, it's adequately secure. I don't understand why we have to jump through all these hoops and hurdles. Or this information, these data elements, they're not sensitive. Or why would our system be a target? Why would this information be a target? So a lot of that plays into some of what is a challenge then in working with sponsors and trying to get the buy-in and trying to get them to work collaboratively.
Exactly. So not all the departments on campus yet realize that we work as closely as we do as a threesome there. And so I'll get people calling to say, you know what, we have this new software system coming into place. We are going to be collecting personally identifiable information, collecting, using, disclosing it, which are the three keys of the FOIP legislation. And so they say, well, they just want to pass something by me to make sure that they're on track. And then I explain that indeed, by all means, they can pass it by me, but we need to include the IT security role. We have to have Gordie at the table as well. And then sometimes they'll say, you know, but the vendor has assured me it's all in place. And so it's at that point that I say, but Gordie will be able to look at whether the industry standards are met. And then anything beyond the IT security speak, anything beyond industry standards, I pass over to Gordie. But it is an ongoing education. Some departments, some faculties, they know it already, but a lot don't. Usually, what we find on the ground is that when there's a big system coming, a big new system, software system coming in, somebody on the team within the department or faculty will know that they have to contact at least one of us. So then if they contact legal first, legal will add the two of us. If they contact me first, I add them. If they contact Gordie first, he lets us know. So that's how it works on the ground.
Great. And sorry, just to backtrack for a second there, I was just thinking of the three entities, Kathy and Privacy, they're the good, by the way. So I'm not going to tell you which one I am. There's a prize for someone who correctly,
But notice the hats too, because even though the privacy office may be the good in this, sometimes we wear our white hats and sometimes we wear our black hats to the meetings. You can't do this, or yes, you can.
Yes, and then according to Jason's last talk, it should all be a white hat, right? It just, yes, there we go.
Is this a good time to talk about research? Or maybe another one? Maybe a little later.
Sure.
Maybe a little later.
We can add it in later too.
Okay.
So some of the good, which we've touched on some of these aspects already as well. Kathy Ann gave a highlight of the regulatory and legislative requirements for our province, and it's not unlike most provinces. And if you don't have your own respective privacy law, then the PIPEDA would supersede then in that case. So in addition to ensuring then that your university stakeholders meet legislation, there's also the opportunity to help them meet best practice, meet standards, meet your own internal university policies. And again, this all speaks to fulfilling diligence, doing what you have to do.
And one legislative piece on this is that inevitably there will be a breach. We can do all our level best to prevent them, but breaches do occur. And so when there is a loss of personally identifiable information, if it's been wrongly disclosed, it's been lost on a laptop, whatever the circumstances are, if we can point to the fact that we've collaborated in the early stages of the project, it's a strong legal argument to show that we have done our due diligence, especially if we've written a privacy impact assessment, and then all the better if we've actually followed it, which hopefully we have. And
Kathy had mentioned in the past our procurement office,
right,
as well,
and supply and management services.
And so, in addition to growing relationships with them, our collaboration with the three of us has really helped to open doors with other key stakeholders across campus, whether it be your registrar's office, the folks who are custodians of your ERP system, for example, or the dean of students and other key stakeholders. It's been invaluable with the three of us being a united team in front, and
Yes.
it's opened up a lot of doors, and that in turn helps the communications and the understanding of the business processes, the mission critical tasks and systems and information flows. And so some of the lessons learned. These were two finalists for the new U of A mascot, but we had to stick with the golden bear. So one of the key lessons learned is to make this as automatic as possible. So we had mentioned some key stakeholders such as procurement, and we've been working with them, and we work with them to, as best to their abilities, make this a great check and balance at that point. And it is a really good catch-all, if you will, because there will be some initiatives that we will only hear about for the first time because procurement has flagged the need for information management, privacy, and security review.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like I had said earlier, if there's a software system, for example, that's coming into place where the university is spending $75,000 or more, then this third point, the new paradigm, the criteria for triggers and flags, it is procurement that will ensure that our offices are involved. But even if the expenditure is less than $75,000, there are, for example, now certain template provisions that have to go into the contract. So it's not that we have to be at the table for every time the university is entering into such a contract, but those provisions have to go in. And then the department that is making the contract, the contracting department, will sometimes have questions about that, and that too will trigger a call to one of our three offices. And then whoever's getting the call, it could be legal, could be privacy, could be IT security, who's ever getting the call will then bring the others into the loop as necessary on a case-by-case basis.
And so again, if it's only a $2,000 system, but if it involves individually identifying info or other sensitive university information, especially if it's going to be flowing out of the university infrastructure and in the custody of an external third party, then that's an example of a new flag and trigger that our procurement didn't previously have.
Yes.
And so it also speaks to invoking the privacy and security and legal process as early in the timeline as possible. So we're working with our PMO office to have a explicit line item during the project initiation phase to have a checkpoint for starting the privacy and security review. At present, it's practice, but it's not as firmly documented as we would like to see it now.
And there may be examples in the room as well. You know, we'll have time for conversation about it. But as IT people, for those of you, as IT people, you may have come upon examples already where your privacy officer was not involved in the early stages, comes along later and has this requirement and this question and that question. Sometimes those could have been avoided by bringing them in earlier.
And we had mentioned some of the other key stakeholders that are invaluable to befriend. And in addition to everyone from procurement to your registrars, to your ERP people, there's key external parties as well. So for example, because we have the teaching hospital, we're partners with our provincial health sector. And so it's very important that our three offices know our counterparts there very well and forge a good working relationship. Also, there's government, there's other post-secondaries.
There's the privacy commissioner's office.
So there's a lot of internal and external stakeholders where it's very key to establish a good, open, clear working relationship with them. And we have found that to be an invaluable. It wasn't always the case when we initially started, and so we worked to forge some of those communication channels.
And I hope you're getting the message then that some of this forging has been done formally, other parts have been done informally, but it does serve to make a strong foundation for our work as we go forward, because we know who to call and people start to know that they are to call us as well.
And the other point then is a commensurate level of controls. And that is to say that we call some of the myths and misconceptions, it's viewed by some that it'll be some overly onerous task or control that'll be recommended. And we're trying to be clear to inform folks. We'll make it commensurate with the risk. So if it's a $2 risk, it would behoove us all to recommend a tens of thousands of dollar control. And so we'll be reasonable and exercise that appropriate risk management.
Exactly. And within the FOIP Act, whether it's something that deals with IT or even if it's something that doesn't deal with any IT system, the standard is the civil standard of reasonableness. So it's not that you have to be perfect with what you're doing. You need to be reasonable in the measures you're taking to ensure an individual's privacy is protected. Or on the flip side of the coin, if you're doing if we're processing an access request, then we have to be reasonable in our judgments about what we can release to the applicant, what we can disclose, and what we have to withhold under the exceptions to disclosure.
And other lessons learned. This relates somewhat to the aspect of being commensurate with the level of risk, and it's being able to walk that tightrope. And my IT security cohorts in the crowd would all feel that same balancing act. That's at times requires some adept walking. And just that's speaking to ensuring adequate privacy and security, meeting your legislative requirements on the one hand, and on the other hand, the needs of the business. So again, be able to meet their mission critical processes and on time and on cost and with the quality that they need. So there's that balance that's required.
And from a legal and privacy perspective, like the acts, the pieces of legislation, we may not always be able to comply with them to the letter. And so that's why it's good to have the working relationship where if something's not going exactly, it's not exactly compliance to the letter of the law, but it's reasonable, it's fair, we need to proceed, there are certain other reasons that we have to get on with the project, then we want to do as well as we can. But the compliance with the letter of the law is sometimes very difficult because the legislation was not, this is my view, not the university's view, nobody else's view, it's just the university might agree, but my view is that the legislation was not written with post-secondaries in mind. It was written, both the Health Information Act and the FOIP Act, they were written primarily with government departments in mind. So we're a public body under the FOIP Act. We have all these provisions to comply with. Sometimes we can to the letter. Sometimes it's a bit of a tricky dance to do. So we do the best we can. And that's why having a strong collegial relationship can be very helpful.
Okay. Did you want to tie in the researchers as well?
Oh, yes. Yes. Do we have one more lessons learned slide? No. Okay, then this is the time. So do some of you work with researchers in the room? Oh, lots. Okay, let me say a bit about our experience, and we can certainly have some more discussion shortly. Research we find to be a little tricky sometimes. Is this an understatement?
Tell us how you really feel.
So we have, we're a very research-intensive institution, as I'm sure many of your universities are as well. We have people collecting, using, disclosing personally identifiable information It could be health information that would come under the Health Information Act. It could be other information. So to be very frank, just now, sometimes there are projects that go forward where really it would have been better to have our offices plus legal involved. Other times we get involved almost anecdotally because somebody from procurement says, you're spending a lot here. You should talk to privacy, you should talk to IT security, you should talk to legal. And then inevitably the researchers come forward and say, well, we've got our research ethics approval. Are you singling us out to do something more? And we say, no, this is really, we're holding you to standards that really apply to everyone. But this is an area of continuing work for sure. So did you want to add anything on that one?
No, just some of the sharing of the pain points for IT and IT security. It's also that gray area when the funding source isn't from the university. So when it's trust funded, whether it's IT staff or IT infrastructure, then there's that gray area. At times, researchers will say, hands off. It wasn't purchased by the university, and it's not to be supported by the university, and therefore it's not bound by the university laws.
And then from a FOIA perspective, when those arguments come forward, the threshold question about whether records in Alberta, the threshold question about whether records are university records, or the question is whether they're in the custody or under the control of the university. So the factors that you're raising, Gordie, well, the computer was purchased by someone else, it's grant funded, this kind of thing. These are all of the factors that we have to work through on the research side.
And just before we move on to finish the other bullets, because we'll have to do so really quick. Another aspect with, or an example, if you will, of walk and check the balance. We have this tool in our back pocket that we've had to offer on occasion, and it's where there's a mission critical project or redevelopment and what have you, and their go live date, their timeline is absolutely critical. And what we'll do at times, if we haven't finished the full privacy and security task at that point, but to date, we did not see any red flags. And from our work to date, we don't anticipate any issues or red flags. What we'll offer is that, okay, let's not impact this mission critical timeline. You've got the conditional go ahead to start on time, provided that we're still going to work in parallel to fully complete the privacy and security task. And if we do come across some red flags that at this point we don't anticipate, but if something does arise, a cease and desist order could be one of the possibilities. So we've had to implement that tool at times, and that's an example of striking a balance. In terms of templates, the Cathy Ann had mentioned in working with our procurement, we have some boilerplate agreement language, and so we'll try not to reinvent the wheel. And even in doing reviews, if it's an external third party or internal party, if there's any existing recent privacy or security review work, we'll fully leverage that. We'll not try to duplicate and whatnot. The culture. And again, we talked about some of the myths and misconceptions. So some of that communication and that relationship building helps around shaping the culture. But otherwise, by default, the cultures, especially in an era of academia and openness, will tend to be at loggerheads, if you will, with some of the privacy and security standards. And we had mentioned then that
We should move on at a time.
Sure, evolving naturally is perhaps the most effective means to develop this tripartite, and finally get your feet wet. So we got our feet wet together as a tripartite, and we built off of that, and it led to a watershed moment, if you will, with our Google experience. That was a watershed moment in terms of being a project where we were able to consolidate previously disparate university-wide.
And it took a long time to negotiate that contract.
But it was thanks to getting our feet wet prior, and then and from that we're building off it. So that's something we highly recommend. Just jump in and
just do it.
And This is the presentation that I'd attended during a EDUCAUSE session that I referenced. So that's there for you. They have an article based on that presentation.
That's who we are, and we are now interested in your comments as well.
Okay, there's a couple of questions over there too. I don't know if you can read it or you want me to read it to you.
When you speak of synergy between these two diverse groups on campus, are you suggesting that a broader culture of information security is being cultivated? Can you comment on the degree to which these different groups feel part of a broader effort? So the diverse groups initially being our.
I think the diverse groups are legal, privacy, and IT security. So is there a broader culture of information security that's being cultivated? I sure think so.
Yes.
I sure think so.
Yes, definitely. And then that's a multi-way flow as well. There's a lot more depth to my privacy and legal understanding that is at times I feel light years ahead of where I was prior to this tripartite.
And also, you know, if I can't make a meeting one day or there's no one from my office that's available too, I know very well that Gordie knows the privacy principles and he will bring them forward as well, because we have worked so closely over the years.
And that goes always as well. So the quick and dirty answer is yes. Does the U of A have a data classification policy? So we don't have a formal one yet university-wide. Our ERP folks, we're PeopleSoft folks, they were one of the first large central units to ratify a data classification standard. And we just, again, don't reinvent the wheel. We fully leverage from the government of Alberta standard. And we in turn have been recommending that throughout the university. So, but we cannot at this time say that there is one consistent standard across the university. We recently hired the university's first ever records management officer, and so it is now part of her portfolio then to work towards create this university-wide standard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you got a question, governance or research?
Governance.
Your choice, sure.
Governance? So who's the directing mind at the university in terms of ultimate risk decision?
We have a risk management portfolio. Oftentimes, thank you for bringing that up, because we are speaking of this tripartite relationship, but the risk management group, especially in contractual negotiations, is usually present as well, depending upon the nature of the risk in the system. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So there's a vice president of risk management, but then ultimately,
Okay, that's
yeah,
where we're.
yeah, okay.
Thanks. Secondly, and this is a researcher's basic disclosure, I'm on that side of the fence as well. Have you seen the growing requirements out of the tri-council and private sector for formal information security sign-off in order to allow grants to continue? We think that U of S can hit my CII, where they're looking for me in my security job to sign off on the information security protection, or the researcher doesn't get access to the big data that they provide. And CII is the Canadian Institute of Health Information, and they have very, very stringent, I think, over-rotated requirements, and that's why we are now putting a plug into what I call the quadripartite, which is research ethics. So we're actually going to push the research approval across my office, and I won't have time to do this in terms of information security. Are you starting to see that? Because CII is the first one that came knocking quite recently.
A very timely question too, because we have a research information management committee where we're ratifying the university's first ever research information standards, specifically around information management, privacy, and security. And so you're exactly right, because it's been acknowledged that REB approval doesn't imply that a full privacy and security review has been
There's actually
attained.
Hopefully in our case, a procedure put under the Research Ethics Board's policy regarding information security and privacy approval.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, that's my specialty from the previous life,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we're just trying to deal with it like ourselves with our teaching hospital. And we're also finding we've got a massive amount of third-party research funders that are suddenly getting extraordinarily sensitive to information. So it's pushing the researchers out of this, it's my data, I want to keep my grant, what can you do to help?
Mhm.
Which is a real change in, so that's one of the.
We are
We
seeing,
often
yes.
compare ourselves to you, so that's why it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
important that.
And on the Kai-Hai side, from the earlier part of your question, we saw that in the health sector as well. We are starting to see it at the university, and we have seen it in the health sector.
Yeah, I
too.
actually we were lucky, we were actually able to argue that it didn't apply to the data, Kai went away. But it's gonna come back and we're gonna get it.
It will be back, and it'll be very interesting to see how you deal with it at the REB level, because Alberta might be looking to Saskatchewan for that as well in due
I'm
course.
gonna get a phone call from Director of Research Ethics, and you sign off on this, and we're gonna have to deal with, does that mean we actually take support of that? We have a real problem with shadow IT, that's the really current version of ghetto IT. And we repatriated it because not trusting a grad student to mean something that's protecting some personal health.
Good question, very good question.
Any other questions? And again, by all means, and anytime, feel free to contact us.